How do you create a cinematic story? Not by thinking about making stuff pretty or slow motion. Alright, so shooting a cinematic film, especially documentaries, it's much more, than just creating good looking images. If you want to tell a cinematic story, you need to use the whole cinematic language, which is, of course, the video and the audio. Everybody knows that. Not enough pay attention to the audio, but it's even more so the action and what's put into the frame that you need to think about to make something cinematic. So the character is actually gonna feed into what story you can tell cinematically. It's gonna dictate the conflict that you can tell. How cinematic is that? How much of the cinematic qualities can you actually embody and get out of that conflict just by following the action? It's also gonna be dictated by the location. Where does the story take place, and does that location feed into how you cinematically can tell the story? Does it have epic mountains, or does it have a lot of action within like the place where it's at? Like, is it mountain biking down a big mountain? All those things will feed into the cinematic qualities. So when you cast somebody, it's gonna dictate what cinematic story you can create.
I wish you kept it like that.
This is pretty, right? Just because I'm walking here doesn't make this cinematic. This is not a cinematic video. It's not a cinematic story. Cinematic story is something else. It's when you immerse somebody into a story world. That's what cinematic is. You also need to think about, like, how do you use location in a story? Like this one. This is a nice location. But how do you use it to tell a cinematic story? You need to think about, like, why do you choose a location? Why do you use that to tell the story? It all comes down to, like, thinking about the story, connecting it to the character, and then the location. How can that benefit the narrative structure that you're trying to tell? Like, subtext is what's going on underneath everything, like the stuff that is not being said. Because the least cinematic thing you can do is interview-based documentaries or any story where everything is just told and spoken out and explained. That's what cinematic is not. That I can define right now. Cinematic is not things that you explain. That's not cinematic. Cinematic is when you embody what people are trying to say as life. When you can see life unfold and you can see a story unfold, that is cinematic. When you can see things with the use of cinematic language, you can be there as an audience. You're put in that place because of perspective, because of using the cinematic language in the right way. That's what it is all about. And also think about, how do you use light? So a certain light or a certain mood can aid a story. So if you shoot everything at sunset, sunrise, or if you shoot everything into the shadows or whatever it is, you can use that to create more of an immersion for the audience. So you should always think about how to use the light to tell the story. For instance, this is pretty simplified, but if you're trying to make a love scene, maybe shooting everything against, like, into the sun, having everything be a little bit glary and all that can aid the romantic feel, or shooting everything in darkness can aid a suspense or something. Or shooting everything low-key into the shadows can kind of create a certain mood and style to it. And then also the grade, of course. Like, how do you grade things? Do you over accentuate the colors, or do you desaturate and make it all milky, that a lot of people that are more of the cinematic quality, in my opinion, tend to go towards? Like, for me, too much color is very much, the indication of somebody not having style, and it's an indication of somebody that likes, video. I'm not so into that, but for some stories it's the right thing. So you need to think about which one is right for you. My style is not right for everyone, but it's my style that I keep and try to keep consistent over my projects as well. And when you make life unfold naturally like that. You just let it play out and people can just watch life unfold, and it's cinematic and it immerses you into the story. You're gonna have a much more impactful thing going on. Like, people shy away from making it look too good in doc world because they can't like envision how to make it natural. I think that's the biggest thing that you need to overcome. If you want to make stuff look good, you can't just do it to make stuff look good. You're going to be criticized for it in the doc industry. So you need to think about how to make it natural and not forced. And when you manage to do that, you're going to have a perfect work of art on your hands. Embrace limitations. You need to think about how can you use your limitations to your advantage. Using only a 50mm lens that is the only one you have can create a certain perspective that can help you to tell a story. So think about like the limitations as something that forces you to be more creative and enhance your creative thinking rather than being a limitation. For every story, you need to find a theme. Take the Pearl of Africa, for instance, which we made into one journey rather than several individual journeys. So when we shot Pearl of Africa, it was probably like 3, 4, 5 different trips that they went on, and when we cut it the first time, you usually cut it in a chronological fashion, just because you're trying to make sense of the story and you just want to have things play out. But when we had done that, it felt like it was overcomplicated and it didn't really like immerse people into the story as we wanted to. It wasn't bad or anything, but it just wasn't as effective as we wanted it to be. So then we came up with this idea that this should be one journey. We simplified things and we made it into one journey, because in essence the story is about one life journey. It's her against the world type of story where love conquers all, and it's not about showing what really happened in real life. It's immersing the audience into her story world, and really that's not about showing what actually happens. That's the contradiction with doing documentaries, because you really need to focus on the real truth, and for us that was just simplifying things, making it into one journey, because the film is about her life journey. It's not about her individual trips to different cities and towns and all that. So we just simplified things and made it into a theme that was one journey, and then you went on that journey with her. That made for a stronger story, and I think that's what it all comes down to in the end.
I have left Uganda so many times, but I have left Uganda knowing I can come back when I want to. I have left Uganda knowing that, oh, I will come back in 3 days, or 4 days, or 1 week. And here I was living and I had no hopes of coming back. You know, no hopes of being able to eat matoke in a very long time, or seeing my mom, or boarding boda, or hearing Luganda being okay. It's the simple things in life that attach you and ground you. I want to be able to wear a bikini and be in the sunshine. I want to have inner validation. It's confusing looking at yourself when I see different body parts for different genders on the same body. It's depressing. Love, don't hesitate to love.
You also gotta learn the 3-act structure. You don't have to follow it once you know about it, but you need to know why you're not following it. So in essence, it's all about the quest journey. So people go out on a quest to conquer a problem. First act is usually discovering a problem and then setting out to conquer it. Second act is usually conquering it or trying to overcome whatever the conflict is. In the end of the second act, they fail. In the third act, they really need to change and really do like everything in their power and like go on such a life-changing journey that they're changed in the end, and they may or may not succeed with their goals of overcoming this. I guess that's a simplified way of like talking about it, but 3-act structures is great for what it is. It's effective, but it's also predictable, which is why I have a love-hate relationship with it. So even though you should learn it, you should also understand that you do not have to follow it. but it's effective to learn about conflict and how to use that to your advantage. So let me know what you think I'm missing here. How do you tell a cinematic story? And also check out the playlist which I've made on that in the show notes.
Oh, we are at the ocean. What?